This week's Four Questions Journalist Spotlight is brought to you by Leff's Atlanta Media, Atlanta's best journalist database. Subscribe at leffsatlantamedia.com.
Welcome to another edition of our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight. We are talking today with a couple of folks from the Reporter newspaper group, and we've got Amy Wenk, who's the editor, and Keith Pepper, who is the publisher, owner, chief poobah. I don't know. Probably has four titles. But we're going to talk about what these papers are, because you've probably seen them around town, but you may not realize they're all connected. And there's a couple that have different names that don't have reporter in the name that are part of the family too. So thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch.
So, Amy, tell us a little bit. I always like to do a little background first. So, give us a little background of like what brought you to the Reporter papers. Give us what's the work history that got you there.
Sure. So I'm an Atlanta native. I grew up in Roswell. I went to Clemson University, and right out of college, I started working at community newspapers, including the Reporter newspaper. So I actually worked for the Reporter back in 2008 to 10. But I spent the bulk of my career as a reporter at the Atlanta Business Chronicle, which was pretty amazing because I came into the Chronicle right as the recession was ending, and got to cover this wave of commercial real estate development in the city, covering Mercedes-Benz Stadium and Pond City Market, the evolution of the Atlanta Beltline. So all those, big projects that really make the city what it is today. And last summer, I came back to Reporter newspapers, this time as editor, and it's just been so fun to join Keith and, try to, better reach our audience, grow our audience, try some new things out. So that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, and I think you and I first met, I think you were working for Patch, right? Back before the Chronicle?
That's right. I did work for AOL when they launched Patch in the Georgia market. So I was the Midtown Patch, which was definitely an interesting experiment.
It's still an interesting experiment. It's still kind of out there in mostly in Atlanta, in Georgia. I don't think it's really anywhere else in Georgia right now. But they're still kind of sort of doing some stuff in around the country. So it's kind of interesting, kind of seeing where that's going and not going. Keith, let's do your 30 seconds of fame here.
Yeah, sure. I'm also an Atlanta native. So I was born at Northside Hospital and grew up in Dunwoody. Then we moved to Sandy Springs. I went to Riverwood High School and then the University of Georgia, where I was in the Grady School. As you know, Mitch, I was a bit of a media savant when I was a kid. My first job was when I was 16 at WSB Radio. I worked there all through high school, all through college. And then after college, you and I worked together for a stint in PR at a local PR or a national global PR firm, Conan Wolf.
Right.
Then I left Atlanta in 1997 and spent about 22 years away between DC and then over 20 years in New York, where I worked in different startups, mostly in and around the digital media and marketing space. Most recently at a company called Outbrain, which is a digital ad network providing content recommendations, which got me back into the publishing and the media world, working with publishers. And when I was ready to move back to Atlanta in 2018, time is so abstract after the pandemic. When I moved back to Atlanta, I was looking for something to do that was a little bit more meaningful, a little bit more civic oriented. And that's when I met Steve Levine, who had started the Reporter newspapers and later acquired Atlanta INtown and started Atlanta Senior Life, which makes up our portfolio. And Steve was looking to retire, and we met and really hit it off both personally, and we shared a vision of what the papers and what community journalism could be and should be. And in 2020, we made a deal in the height of the pandemic, and that's when I came into the company in December of 2020.
I think that was our conversation when you called and told me what you were doing. I said, "You're buying a newspaper?"
Yeah. It was there weren't. I don't know. There were a ton of people lined up to buy a newspaper at the end of 2020.
You outbid them all.
Well, Bill Torpy famously called me a nut in the AJC, which was fair. Yeah, it's been an amazing year.
So Amy, so you guys have run through for us the Reporter papers.
Sure. So the Reporter covers 4 communities. We're in Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Buckhead, and Brookhaven. But Keith can share more. We also have 2 other papers. We have Atlanta Senior Life, and we have the Atlanta INtown newspaper, and then also Rough Draft.
Yeah. So who wants to talk about Rough Draft? Because that's your newest, right?
Yeah, Rough Draft's our newest brand. We launched it March of last year. It's an email newsletter trying to capture there's obviously a lot of activity. Newsletters are pretty hot right now. But it's a new brand for us, but it's really another distribution point for us to get the content that we have and deliver it out to people and build, in many ways, a future audience for our content. So the way that people consume news has changed so much, and the newsletter there are some things that we do as newsletter first, and we can talk about that, but it's really more personality driven than some of our other email newsletters. And it's meant to be, if you have 4 minutes in the morning, it's meant to be all you need to read to sound interesting at lunch that day.
Well, and because the newspapers are monthly, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have, so this gives you that opportunity to have a platform to tell stories, even if they're, shorter stories or stories in advance that might be in the print 2 or 3 weeks later, but not have to wait necessarily, right?
Well, complement. I mean, the websites are updated multiple times a day, and so we're becoming, like every media company, a digital first media company, meaning that breaking, no one's getting breaking news from a monthly or even a daily newspaper anymore. So
true. That's true.
So the editorial team is putting news as it happens on the website, on social media, and the newsletter is just another way to get into people's inboxes. Literally, we hear from readers, and we're getting great feedback on it. In their bed, the first thing people do when they wake up in the morning is that they look at their phone. And if Rough Draft can be that, that friendly, when we were growing up, it was the morning paper. We had to walk out to the driveway, and we had to get the paper and bring it in to find out the sports scores, to find out what had happened. Obviously, that model doesn't work anymore. So this is the new daily paper, I guess, in a way.
Now, Rough Draft, it's 3 times a week, right?
Yeah, right now we're 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
So what do people do on Tuesdays and Thursdays? they just wake up and go, no, there's no Rough Draft today. What am I going to do? So Amy, how would you say the Reporter papers are different? What kind of sets them apart from other media around town, like the AJC or other websites?
Well, we're very high quality journalism. Our articles are well researched. We have a staff of writers who, are focused on the communities that we serve. So, they're at the city council meetings, the school meetings. Oftentimes, we're the only reporters at those meetings. We really cover stuff at the community level, at the street level. Our content is also free. I think that makes us different. And our papers are, they're printed on high quality newsprint, and they're mailed into the homes, which also makes us different. And, I'd also say that, in an ideal world, every local community would have a newspaper, but, that's really not the case in today's world. So, I really think we're unique because we're, one of the few people that really do what we do in Metro Atlanta.
I need a Reporter paper for unincorporated DeKalb County. So I'm between Tucker and Brookhaven. So I'm nowhere. We couldn't quite, nobody would take us, right? So we don't, there's those guys. So I don't have a paper.
Let's talk.
All right. What will we call that?
What part of town is it?
It's the Oak Grove area.
Okay.
So it's Northwood Hills, La Vista, kind of the Toco Hills, North Lake area. But we're
Nice.
literally we're like this far from Tucker and this far from Brookhaven and this far from Decatur. So
You should have a community paper, right?
I think we should. So Keith, we'll call you. I'll call you later. So we'll see what we can do. So if people, I know it's interesting with PR folks. Sometimes, not me, but other people will sometimes pitch stories that are a little bit off target. And then and you guys with a kind of a targeted geographic area, when someone has a story, obviously it needs to have some sort of person business angle that hits one of those areas, right?
Yeah, definitely. We like to think about like two buckets of news, right? Like the news that people need, the public safety, the education, the local government. And then there's another bucket, which is like that news that people crave, right? Like the restaurant news, the culture news, real estate. So those are broadly, the categories of news that we're looking at. But yes, we always want to have that local tie into the community. I would say as far as pitches, one thing that we could definitely always use more of is like great stories about local people, like interesting people doing interesting things. So we always welcome those ideas.
And you have Carol, who does the, what's her column called?
Worth Knowing.
Worth Knowing. Right. Don't tell her I forgot the name of her column.
Yeah. So she really likes to feature, good people doing good things, right?
Yes. Yeah. Best way to reach you guys? Usually email, text, social media. What's a good way to get in touch with you if you got a story idea?
Email's good.
Email's good. Okay. Good. You still have those, what do they call them? Phones that people could call you? You have those?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You ever get people call you and say, I got a story idea? And you say, well, why don't you just email me that? I know that the newsroom.
When I email people, they say, why didn't you just text me?
Oh, well, there's that too.
Texting is okay.
Texting's okay. And emails are good. I do sometimes like to pick up the phone and call people. Sometimes it's good just to have a conversation. But nowadays, email is a good way to kind of start that and say, hey, actually I use like texting or social media, a good way to say, can I talk to you? Can I give you a call? And then someone can say, call me in 10 minutes or call me tomorrow or that kind of thing. So what are some topics for the papers that are important in your geographic area that you're following and you want to be following over the next couple of months?
Well, we're definitely focused, of course, on, the whole Buckhead City issue, following that through the Georgia General Assembly. Beyond that, I would say that, something that's very interesting to us is following kind of the continued urbanization of these areas, right? These are largely suburban areas, but each of them is really putting a lot of work into, building up that city center, right? We've seen it in Sandy Springs. We're seeing Dunwoody, urbanize a little bit more. And the same thing with Brookhaven has been looking at, like, how does it build a town center for itself? So I think that's, something that we're following closely. Affordable housing, right, I think is a big topic for our areas too. Tree preservation, things that affect, property owners.
Okay. And Keith, you mentioned, Amy, you mentioned something about it's a free publication. There's no subscription cost. So Keith, are you advertising supported and sponsorship supported? Is that the main support for the papers?
Yeah, right now all of our revenue comes from advertising. So we've been lucky to have amazing support from the business community, both large and small. So for now, that's where we get all of our revenue from advertising, and believe it or not, about 97% of our revenue comes from print advertising. So we have a lot of growth, a lot of greenfield ahead on the digital side, but we, because, as Amy mentioned, we're printing on high quality newsprint, we're mailing into homes. Big differentiator for us is that it's getting in mailboxes and taken into the home. And the monthly cadence, so it's almost like that direct mail advertising aspect of that is really valuable for our advertisers.
Okay. And you guys have, so, and I know and I'll just kind of say this for our viewers and listeners, you can get the print edition, the paper edition of the paper, and then you also have digital edition that you can see on the website if you want to kind of see what looks like a newspaper, but is actually the electronic format. I read a lot of papers that way. For some reason I like it. I read the regular website kind of setup too, but I like that digital format. I feel like I'm reading a paper. I can scan the headlines, right? Anything else announcement wise, things that are coming up that you want to talk about, either of you?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe Keith, do you want to talk about some of the partnerships that we have?
Yeah, it's been an exciting time. We've struck a bunch of content and distribution partnerships with local other media companies in the market. So it kind of cuts both ways. Every month, in both Atlanta INtown as well as in Amy's papers, the reporter newspapers, we run tech news from Hippopotamus, which is a local tech blog. So they're a digital only site, and we take their one column a month and we run it in print to get it into our homes and our communities. Some of them may see it already online, but many may not. So that's been a great partnership that we launched in the last few months. We've had for 6 or 7 months the same relationship with Maria Saporta and the Saporta Report. So the business column in the Reporter papers is by Maria or one of her columnists. And then similarly, we run every month or every other month from Atlanta Civic Circle a piece in print as well. And we're just looking to do more and more of those. On the reverse is the AJC came to us almost about a year ago and asked us for, if they could run some of our content both online and in print. So it started with our senior life content, where they started running that in their Sunday section that they do periodically for the senior community. And now they're running almost, once or twice a week pieces from our coverage of Dunwoody, Brookhaven, of Sandy Springs, and also of Atlanta INtown. So it's been really great for us to work with them. I think that they've been supportive of the community, and it's allowed us to also be supportive of other folks that don't have print, don't have print products, and get their content into mailboxes. And then the other thing, another thing that we're doing is we launched with WABE as a community calendar. It's under a brand called How Do You Atlanta. So if you go to howdoyouatlanta.com, it's a community calendar. And the concept there is, as a consumer, I was so frustrated missing concerts and missing events. And I don't think that Atlanta needs to have 10 so-so event calendars. I think we just need to have one great calendar. And spoiler alert, no one's making a ton of money off of their digital calendar. So if we can all combine resources together and have a great site that's mobile friendly, that's good for the event planners and concert promoters, and good for the publications, then it's been a great win for everyone.
20 years ago, you probably weren't in town at this point, Keith, but the AJC at one point had a lot of zoned editions that were county specific print special sections for DeKalb County. I mean, they had a huge Gwinnett bureau for a long time.
Yeah.
And those kind of dwindled, obviously, to a community page now, and then the partnership with you guys. So I'm sure, a couple of years from now, you'll be able to buy the AJC, and you can incorporate their stuff into the reporter papers.
We have a saying. I'm looking at a sticky note on my monitor here that says "meaningful, not massive." So.
So you're saying you have no intention to buy the Atlanta Journal-Constitution? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is exactly what you're hearing.
I'm going to quote you on that. 5 years from now, we'll see what happens. All right, so we get to the hard question here. So, Amy, what's something kind of fun or cool or different about Amy that people might not know about?
Well, so I actually wrote about this in a column one month, but. So I was the big winner once on Let's Make a Deal. Do you know that game show with Wayne Brady?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to go for the big deal.
And how'd you do?
I did pretty good. I won like $3,000 worth of stuff.
All right. Keith, what's the crazy thing people don't know about you?
I think the craziest thing is that I finished in the top 500 of the New York City Marathon, in the top 200 of the Peachtree Road Race. So I used to run quite a bit. So I would say that would be it.
I ran the Lakeside High School 5K last week, and I finished. People keep asking me, what was your time? It's like, I finished.
Well, I told
There we go.
I haven't run a race in 10 years because the last race I ran, I won. It was the first race I ever won. So I decided that would be the last race I ever ran. So, and
on a high note, all transparency, I walked the Lakeside 5K. I didn't run it. So anyway, but it's a fundraiser. I was a sponsor. So anyway, all right. So Amy, what's either, I'll give you a choice, either the last book you've read or the last podcast you listened to?
Well, so to be totally honest, the last book I read was Llama Llama Red Pajama with my toddler.
Okay. That's great.
So most of the reading I'm doing these days is definitely with him.
Where the Wild Things Are?
Yeah, we got that.
It's one of my favorites. Keith, what's the last kids book that you've read?
I give The Giving Tree as my go-to baby gift. The book I'm reading currently, which I highly recommend, is called Crying in H Mart, by Michelle Zauner, a woman known as Japanese Breakfast, the singer. But I listen to a ton of podcasts, and the last one I listened to, which I have to give a plug for because they're partners of ours, is Political Breakfast on WABE, which I'm a religious listener to.
Okay. And you guys don't have a Reporter Newspapers podcast, do you?
We don't currently, but we're
all right. Let's put that on the list.
On the roadmap.
They're fun to do. Okay. So favorite local restaurant, Amy?
I'm going to go with Arepa Mia in Avondale Estates.
I don't know that one.
100% gluten-free, which I enjoy.
Okay. Keith?
Miller Union on the west side.
All right. That's a good one. Favorite guilty pleasure? Amy?
I'm going to say those competition cooking shows like the Great British Bake Off. I could just watch like those for too long. So
when my kids were born, my first kid was born, I was up doing the 2 a.m. feeding, and I got hooked on the Iron Chef. The original Japanese version. I'd never seen it before, but I was like so fascinated by it. Okay, a favorite local. Did I do your favorite guilty pleasure, Keith?
I did not.
Okay, all right.
I think it's maybe tied to my local restaurant. I think it's sitting at the bar at Miller Union.
Okay. What's your drink?
Or the chocolate pistachio croissant at Little Tart. I'll give a plug for that.
What's your drink at the bar at Miller Union?
It's whatever Neil tells me to get. So,
all right. Favorite
usually a Spanish red or a something like that.
All right. Favorite local getaway. Where do you go to relax a little bit? Place, a park, a pond.
So when it's warmer, I like to get up like really early on a weekend and go climb Stone Mountain and watch the sunrise.
That's a great one. Keith?
I like to go, my hyper local, since we're in the hyper local business, getaway is the unpaved part of the Beltline just south of Glenwood Park. I like to run there on the weekends. It's much less crowded, and you can go now all the way to the West End without crossing the street. So that's
all right.
Secret running spot.
And this last one may overlap a little bit, but favorite non-work hobby? I'll let Amy go first.
Definitely gardening.
Okay. Flowers or edible vegetables, or?
Both. I have a pretty good yard over here, so we do some tomatoes, but we do like a lot of flowers.
All right. Keith?
Can I say sitting at the bar at Miller Union?
Back to that one again, huh? All right.
You can tell I don't have kids.
Miller Union used to give you some free drinks for these plugs you're giving them here. I will. Who's the chef over there?
Steven Satterfield. I think,
right.
I like to eat out. I'm not not the best cook, so that's sort of my entertainment.
We'll tag them and see if they invite you over for dinner, as a thank you for the plug or something. Anything else about anything you guys are working on that we should talk about that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I'm super excited that this month we have a new sales leader that joined us, and it's sort of an Atlanta media legend, Neil Major, who I know Mitch, from his time at Cox Radio and then at 790 The Zone. So just amazing for me in terms of just expanding our sales team in that way. So that's super exciting, and just continuing to plug along. The year's off to a great start. Revenue wise, we're up. We were up in 2021 over 2020, and just the first 2 months of this year, we're already up significantly. So I'm super optimistic about what's ahead for us in 2022.
So since you're doing so well, then that Oak Grove Reporter newspaper shouldn't be too hard for your next expansion, right?
No, I mean I want to say I know you're joking, but this is the I'm serious. Third time you've said it.
I'm serious because we do not. This is Brookhaven gets covered. Obviously we don't have a city or a city government to cover, but we do have lots of restaurants over here. So.
Yeah, but when you think about the expansion, and we do think about it, and so I think the way that the company grew up to now was following that cityhood movement, right, which is a much more loaded term in February 2022 than it was before. But so starting in Sandy Springs and then in Buckhead and then expanding, into Dunwoody, into Brookhaven. This year Brookhaven's celebrating its 10th year as a city this year. And we've been around, with them that whole time. So when we look at other cities that are contiguous to where we are, it's certainly the way we think about, what are the opportunities that we can grow into. And I think, back to, if I can give another little plug for Rough Draft, it allows us to be a little bit more flexible on our geography. So, I think of it as, if our audience for our papers is artificially, the line is drawn, with Rough Draft, we can be a little bit more regional or whatever you want to call it. So I know we have a lot of readers in Athens because we've done some coverage of that up in there, so we can start to cover more things than just in our areas. And I think that's a big opportunity for us to dip our toe and to figure out what makes sense and where, let's just speaking very frankly, what makes sense business wise,
right.
Community to support that.
Right. You got to have the advertising dollars to support a advertising driven newspaper.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess what Tucker doesn't have a newspaper per se. I know that Decatur-ish has a kind of a Tucker Observer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Dan launched they launched a website, the Tucker Observer. But I don't think there's a print paper there. There may have been with there may have been like the Tucker Times when Janet had the
there was that, but she's kind of retired now, so there's not that. And then there's a kind of a semi-monthly kind of sort of feature kind of magazine that Tucker something that, but it's not any kind of, it's not, he doesn't have a website or anything. So, but
there's a lot happening. Tucker is booming. Your area, which doesn't really have a name, is booming. Obviously, if you follow the Hollywood studios where they're going, there's just so much happening, both east, west, north, south of Atlanta. So it's an exciting time for Atlanta.
Well, we talked recently to somebody from Gray TV about what they're doing over in the Assembly area, which is city of Doraville. But that's definitely going to impact business and growth in the areas contiguous to that, which are going to be your areas too. So that's going to be pretty.
And Brookhaven, Brookhaven's attached to Chamblee, and there's a ton going on in Chamblee with restaurants and housing. So it's a good time. My goal was to get through the first year of owning it and make sure that we could do it. And we had, exceeded my expectations. And I think, we've got a lot of exciting stuff. And it's also, the community has been so supportive, from the business community to the other media companies. I've had lunch, multiple lunches, dinners, collaboration talks with almost everybody. And so that, I think that's how we're going to survive. We need more readers. We need a robust media environment. So the work that you do and making sure that everyone is working together is really important to us.
Excellent. We've been talking with Amy Wenk, Keith Pepper with the Reporter Newspaper Group. And this has been another edition of our 4 Questions Journalist Spotlight. Join us next week for another edition. And of course, if you want to check out our database of Atlanta journalists, check out leffsatlantamamedia.com. And if you want to check out our Mitch's Media Match service that connects reporters with local sources, check out mitch'smediamatch.com and our monthly Mitch's Media Musings newsletter, blog, whatever we call that goes out the middle of every month. Excellent. Thank you both. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mitch.